So I'd like to introduce our amazing panel, who've come a long way to be here. And found it quite scary as well, I think. So I'm Dr. Alice. I'm director of the Festival Tomorrow. I'm chairing tonight. And then with me here in the Hawking building, we have Divika Suresh, who is, make sure I get your title right. Yeah. You might have noticed I was on your LinkedIn again today, just double checking. So if your LinkedIn's wrong, it's your fault. Yeah. Head of ProVeg Incubator and Program Manager at Cellular Agriculture Ltd.
That's right. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Phew. And Dr. Chris Bryant. Chris is Executive Director of Bryant Research. I think there's probably a link between the name there. And he's also an Honorary Research Associate at the University of Bath, so he is legit. So welcome to both of you. We give a quick round of applause for our guests. Thank you. We've also been granted, as we don't stop really, you're allowed in here, you're not usually allowed in, we get behind the scenes access for the tours, but we've also got behind these access into out of hours into the labs at Cellular Agriculture Ltd. So I'm especially pleased to be able to introduce, if it works, via our live link up, it's kind of the tension in the room is quite palpable. Dr. Alice Esperanza, who is Senior Tissue Engineer at Cellular Agriculture Ltd. How are we doing? Oh, yes! Hey! Can you hear us okay? Can you hear us?
All good on my end.
Brilliant. Can you all hear her? Good. Amazing. Thank you. You've even got safety goggles on, like a real scientist.
Double glasses.
Double glasses. Do you usually wear them, or are they just for our benefit? You're just cosplaying a scientist?
Always.
Okay.
It's very important. Always a lab coat and always your goggles.
Nice, good. So that's our panel. So thank you all for coming. And so before Alice takes us on the tour of the labs, I wanted to just get a grip with some of the basics of what we're talking about, okay? So could you both, actually, and Alice too, but the panel, could you tell us just briefly about your role and how you fit into the kind of ecosystem of thinking about, food of tomorrow?
So I work with the ProVeg Incubator. So we are a startup incubator for the future of foods. So for the past 8 years, we've been looking into different startups that's producing the foods of tomorrow, so to speak. So that includes cellular agriculture, precision fermentation, as well as plant-based foods. So by what we mean by incubation is that we support them anywhere in their journey, so connecting them to different partners, helping them with investment, as well as just helping them scale. As part of my role at Cell Ag UK, what we do is we try to build an ecosystem for cellular agriculture. So we try to bring people together, do talks like these, get people interested in the future of food. Yeah.
Thank you. Chris?
Nice. Yeah, thanks for being here, everyone. Coming out on a rainy Monday night in the middle of nowhere. It's much appreciated. And the little ones in the front, that's good parenting. Well done. Well done, you. Nice to see you guys. Yes, my name's Chris Bryant. I run a company called Bryant Research, and I'm also involved with the Alternative Proteins Association, which is an industry group for alternative proteins here in the UK. So my role really is focused on the social science aspect. We do a lot of public opinion polling, social experimentation, focus groups, and that kind of thing, as well as engaging on the policy side to help there to be a facilitative regulatory environment here in the UK. So you might have heard about the Cell Cultivated Products Sandbox, or you might not have, which is being run by the Food Standards Agency to help regulators here in the UK get to grips with what needs to be done to effectively regulate cultivated meat as well.
Okay. I'm going to get to you later. I'm looking at here, but you're there, aren't you, when I look at you? Okay. Okay. I'm going to come back to you later, Alice, when we do the tour, so you can tell us what you do then. But, it sounds like you're doing a lot of playing with kind of weird food, essentially. But can you tell us what the challenges are for the food system? Why are you doing this? Why do we even need you to be doing this research? Or is it just scientists playing with things?
Yeah.
Because they do like to play.
No, that is a good question. I think I can get to it from a point of view of how I got into the space as well. So I turned vegan about 5 to 6 years ago. That's primarily because I had a lot of time on my hands and I did a bunch of reading, and then I just couldn't reconcile the effects of my food and where it's coming from. Essentially, we have this big global problem wherein we're producing food, but very inefficiently. We're producing it in a way that is breaking the planet. It's making it very hard for us to meet our climate targets. It's also part of a very unethical system of animal cruelty. And also, it's not guaranteeing food security. So overall, we're just not able to feed people in a sustainable, secure, just way. So we are having to look at other sources of food. Look at ways that we can kind of build this protein toolkit that's not completely reliant on one system of animal agriculture, which is why we're looking at different sources of food. We're looking at plant-based, we're looking at cell-cultivated, we're looking at fermentation-derived food. And that's what brought me to the space.
I mean, that's pretty comprehensive. Anything else you can add to that? What would you just wanted to make new food?
Yeah, no, I think there's all sorts of problems with the way that we produce particularly animal products today. There's something called feed conversion ratios. You can have a Google and find out about the number of calories that we have to feed to animals in order to get 1 calorie back. And ranging from the most efficient of the animal products, which is chicken, which still takes about 9 calories of feed for us to get 1 calorie of chicken, right up to the least efficient, which is cows, takes about 120 calories of feed for us to get 1 calorie of beef. So there's an awful lot of resources that need to go into that, and a lot of the environmental problems to do with animal products are basically driven by that basic inefficiency. So yes, you have the methane emissions directly from cows that are being farmed, but actually a big issue is the amount of land that has to be used to grow their feed, which is otherwise used for carbon sequestration. For example, a lot of our animal feed in the UK is imported soy, which maybe is from deforested areas and so on. So there's all sorts of environmental inefficiencies that go along with that as well. I think this will become clearer as food security becomes an issue of national security as well. It's not ideal to be in a position where you're reliant on animal farming, which is reliant on a ton of imported feed. So that's why some of the most advanced countries in the world with respect to alternative proteins are those for whom food security is a very prescient issue. Being Singapore and Israel, these have the highest number, have the highest number of alternative protein companies per capita. And that's because they're very aware of the food security issues. Particularly Singapore, it's like an island city. There's almost no farmland, right? So they're very, very reliant on food imports. Over 90% of the food's imported. So obviously that's not a good position for a country to be in. Yes, and as my fellow panelist said as well, the animal cruelty involved in factory farming is not something that we can ignore forever. The vast majority of animals that are farmed are on factory farms where they're not able to express their natural behaviours. They're often in small cages and so on. So there's a vast amount of animal suffering in the way that we're doing it at the moment. It is very difficult to get people to move away from consuming meat and animal products. And so an important part of that puzzle is to basically be able to produce the same or very similar products in a much more efficient and cruelty-free way, which is where we get to cultivated meat and plant-based meat and so on.
So there's been a lot of, used a lot of technical words, some of which I followed, some of which I didn't. I think one of the things you said, I've already got in trouble, right, for saying lab-grown meat. And using in the title, there's a bit of a, we've noticed you've said lab-grown meat. We'd rather you didn't use that term, which is absolutely, it paints a picture of people. People get a sense of what you mean when you say lab-grown meat. But it's a kind of a bit of a shorthand, and it does paint this kind of, Frankenstein science kind of thing, right? It sounds a bit weird, which is why people are interested. But you've mentioned there's actually a whole range of different alternative proteins and different methods that you've kind of touched on there that aren't just, in my mind, a petri dish with a steak growing on it. Could you just kind of go through what those terms are? What is that kind of spread of different things you're actually working with?
Yeah, I'm trying to think how best to phrase this. But yeah, essentially there's 3 different types of alternative protein. So there's plant-based, there's cell-cultivated, and then there's fermentation. So plant-based is when you try to manipulate plant cells so that they mimic animal cells. So they perform like meat when you're eating it. I think you guys might have tried like Beyond Burgers or Impossible Burgers. That is your plant-based burger. When it comes to fermentation, it's actually a very like traditional methodology of preparing food. It's kind of like how you create curd or like yogurt. But in this case, a microorganism is brewing your protein in a sense of saying it. I don't know how better to say it.
Alice is nodding, so when she...
Yes, okay,
and
good.
she looks like a scientist.
Okay,
so,
I got the scientist seal of approval.
when she starts shaking her head, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I'll tag team.
Yeah.
And then cell cultivated or lab grown, it is grown in a lab. I guess the ideology of like thinking of it as like Frankenfood is why we try not to use lab grown. But it's essentially growing the cells of your final meat product in the lab instead of growing the entire animal or rearing it in a way that is inefficient. So you're not growing your entire cow, you are growing your steak in the lab. So you're cultivating the cells in a lab in cultivators. So cell cultivated is just a better way of framing it.
Cell cultivated. Yeah, but if I say cell cultivated on the title of a thing, no one's going to come.
Yeah, that's fair.
They want a picture of steak growing on a petri dish. So this is actually quite a spread. It's not just one technology,
Yes.
I guess, and they've all got their different challenges.
Yes.
I kind of wanted to pass over to Alice now because she's been really patient and got dressed up for us. So thank you again. Basically, you're just in work really late in order to do this, aren't you?
Yeah, just did a late shift today.
So
Happy to be here with you guys.
yeah, well, thank you, and thank you for getting permission to have the lab open for us too. Could you just introduce yourself? I've said your job title, but where do you fit in? And then just show us around.
Yeah, so I'm Alice. I'm a senior tissue engineer at Cellular Agriculture Ltd, which confusingly we also call CellAg, so the same name. And we're basically a company that designs bioreactors to scale up cell culture. So cell culture has been happening for decades and decades. But to make the amount of cells that we would need to replace any meaningful amount of meat, you're going to need huge systems to do that. And so that's the challenge that our company is trying to solve, is how can you grow trillions and trillions and trillions of cells efficiently, as we've been saying. And yeah, I'll just hop into the tour now.
Yes, please. If people have questions, do kind of put your hand up. She can't see you, so she won't know. But we'll see you sitting there patiently with your hand up at least.
Whenever you'd like. I'm just going to switch my camera around. And we'll do a crash course in all of the terminology and stuff that you'll need to know. So first, I'm going to take you over here to our microscope. So these are cell culture flasks. Sorry, I'm holding my tripod. So that's a cell culture flask, and it's growing cells from a commonly used mouse cell line called C2C12. And right now we're growing muscle cells. So we grow myoblasts. They can continuously expand into more and more and more of themselves. And then they can also mature into mature muscle fibers and myotubes in a process that we call differentiation. So these cells, let me focus the microscope and I'll give you a better look at it. The cells you see here were seeded only a couple of hours ago. So they're still very circular, and not all of them have attached to the surface. Like if I wiggle the flask, you might see some of them stay stationary and others start moving around a bit. Whereas once they've been in a flask for a little while, they will have all flattened down and started spreading out and adopted more of the morphology, which is what we call the shape, that we would expect from muscle cells. So these have been growing for 3 days. And then, when we're differentiating them, they completely change their morphology. So this is what it looks like once they've differentiated. Got a picture from some that differentiated for just over a week. You can see those same cells have fused together from single cells into these long myotubes. And these would also fuse, if you continue the maturation process, into mature muscle fibers. And that's what gives you that fibrous texture that you associate with meat. And it's really interesting. You can see that they're sort of self-aligning, and some of them are chunkier than others, and all of that can be a function of how we treat them, what we feed them, all of those sorts of things. So then I just wanted to talk about the liquid. So this pink liquid is called cell culture medium. And basically, that provides cells with absolutely everything that they need to grow and thrive. So it will give them sugar for energy, maybe amino acids for protein building, vitamins, trace minerals, so that their enzymes work and they're protected from reactive species. There's also antibiotics, since the cells that we're growing are just muscle, they don't have an immune system. So they need to be protected from contamination. And then there's also growth factors that sort of direct the gene expression of the cells. And then on top of all of that, it contains a perfect concentration of salts. So it keeps them from dehydrating or hyperhydrating, either of which would kill the cells. And the ones that I'm currently using are pink because they have an pH indicator that will tell us if they're becoming too acidic or too basic. And they are buffered as well to keep them in a nice physiological pH range. That's what we call it. Our bodies like around 7.4 for their pH. And you can see, I've got a little stack here actually. Let's see. You can see visually which ones are growing better or worse, because these are all the same media, but one is more, let me turn it the other way. One is much more pink, and then you get an orange, you get a peach. So the ones that go more orange have become more acidic over time, and that's because they're producing more metabolites. The metabolites typically tend to acidify the media. So it's nice. It's a nice way to sort of visually see how your cells are doing. And then when we're growing flasks like this, take you all the way to the other side of the lab, we typically keep them in an incubator. So these are small incubators suitable for flasks or well plates, things with pretty small surface areas. This keeps them at the nice 37 temperature, very nicely humidified. And then you'll also see a CO2 concentration there. That's because most cell culture media, in order to buffer to the correct pH, they use CO2 in the atmosphere to sort of balance the buffer system. So that's like the basics of cell culture. And then when we're graduating into reactors, another term you'll need to know is scaffold. So muscle cells are adherent cells because they require a surface to grow on. And that's why the ones that we're looking at in flasks are sort of sitting down, they're attached, they're stuck down onto their scaffold. And that's just what we call whatever they're growing on at the time. These flasks are made of polystyrene, which is very typical for cell culture, and it's been plasma treated to make the cells just love the material, and they want to stick to it. And the number of adherent cells that can grow in the system is directly related to the surface area of a flask. So these are called T25s because they are 25 centimeters squared. That's the surface area that they've got. So into a flask this size, you might seed 100,000 cells, and then you might get around 700,000 out. So a 7-fold increase over just a few days. But if you consider that the mass of a mammalian cell is only a couple of nanograms, that's 1/1 billionth of a gram, you would need around 500 billion cells, which, if you're just using these flasks, would require about 1 million of these flasks. So that is not very feasible. And that's where reactors come in. That's our job at Cellular Agriculture, is to figure out how to get the surface area that we need. So I'm going to show you one of our bioreactor modules. So this is one of our reactors. I'm going to hold it as close as I can without moving it out of focus. But this is a hollow fiber bioreactor. We call it our R&D size. It's basically the smallest size that we make. And we do all of our high throughput experiments with that, basically testing the best operating conditions before we scale up into much, much larger ones. The module is filled with tons, I would say this one has hundreds, of tiny hollow fibers. So each one of them is basically like a straw, and it serves the same purpose as your capillaries or your veins. It delivers nutrients directly to cells that are growing on the surface of the fibers, and it takes the waste products away. So it keeps them healthy and happy and gives them a lot of surface area to grow on. So this module has about 20 times the surface area of this flask, even though they're not dissimilar in size. And I'm about to show you another one that is even bigger. So we will now come look at some of these in their operation mode. So we've got quite a few. This is a much larger incubator, but it's doing the same thing. Temperature, CO2. You can see a bunch of our modules set up. They're running basically with a reservoir of media that's being circulated through to deliver oxygen, nutrients to the cells, and then take the waste away. So you've got all these sensors. This blue capped one is an oxygen sensor. And when the oxygen drops too low, we know to increase the flow rate. We also have these little sample ports. So every day we can take a sample and see if the cells will need fresh media, if they've consumed all of the sugar or if they have too much waste in them, all this stuff. So this experiment that you're seeing, you can see the media are all different colors. That's because they're slightly different formulations. And they're all running with that R&D size module. But we can improve even more. So these are our automated systems. And this is the bigger module that I was telling you about. This one is about 370 times the surface area of a T25 flask. I'll just grab a flask real quick. See? It is bigger, but I wouldn't say it's 375 times bigger. So you're getting so much surface area in so little space. And the beauty of these automated systems is that it takes so much of the manual manipulation out of running reactors. You're not manually checking the oxygen. You're not manually taking samples of metabolites. It has an auto sampler. It has its own O2 sensor down here that can respond in real time to changing needs of the cells. And you can see it's in this great box. This means that it can also do its own temperature control. So you don't have to have this huge incubator. And it's also got these nice handles. It's portable. So this is the sort of system that we're moving toward to make it as easy and efficient as possible to run R&D size reactors. And then, of course, we're also scaling into much, much larger sizes to try to meet the demand for the cells. And that is the crash course. Any questions?
Thank you. So I've already got a question from someone who's watching online on YouTube. Two-part question. So, there's a question and then there's a reason why they're asking, which is kind of important to them. So the question is the cell being grown based on any particular type of animal? So that's part one. The part two is because they have something called alpha-gal syndrome, which causes an allergic reaction to mammal meat and mammal products. So they're kind of worried will this be another meat they have to avoid?
Well, the cells I've just shown you are actually from mouse, and they're just our like workhorse cell line. They've been around since the 70s, basically, and they're well established. So we just use them to test things. But then we work with ones that we isolate ourselves or get from other cultured meat companies. So we've worked with a bunch of different cell types. We've done chicken, bovine, multiple types of fish, pig. I think we've done cow. Yeah, so we've done like a wide range of what you would call like typically edible species, but obviously that's just a social construct anyway. But yeah, we've done all sorts of those more common ones.
I mean, you started with mice, which we don't eat quite so much, although Romans ate mice, didn't they? But yeah, our current social construct doesn't eat mice anyway. But I guess this person couldn't have eaten that one, but hopefully be able to eat the chicken. Any other questions online or in the room? Yes? If you hang on a second, I'm going to ask you to ask the question again, but with the microphone so people online can hear you. Sorry, I should have got you that to start with.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So how efficient is the lab growing process compared to agriculture? And how much has that improved? Okay, today it's so many calories, but a year ago it might have been 10 times worse, and then the sort of projected forecast for that as well, please.
Do you want to take that, Alice?
Sure. So because there is no scaled all the way version of what we're doing right now, a lot of the comparisons to industrial agriculture are forecasts at the moment. They're called techno-economic analyses and LCAs, life cycle assessments. And so you can read all sorts of different ones, and a lot of them disagree. But some of them say that this would be a huge improvement on the amount of land you would need per calorie produced, and also probably an improvement on the amount of water required, but may use a similar amount of more energy. And it also depends on which meat you're comparing to. So if you're comparing to chicken, which is extremely efficient, then cultured meat may not be as efficient in terms of energy, eutrophication, all sorts of different things. Whereas if you're comparing to beef, and especially like grass-fed beef, then it's much more likely to be more efficient on different scales. But there's things where it does better and worse. I don't know if there's anything anyone else would want to add to that.
It kind of depends on what your measure is, doesn't it? I mean, I think we talk.
Yeah.
It's like we talk a lot about the carbon emissions, the CO2 equivalent emissions of meat production, but you've touched on kind of water use and pollution. I mean, there's a kind of ongoing campaigns in this country, obviously, about the water pollution in the rivers from chicken farming, right? So it's probably, whereas energy is one of the efficiency measures. Is there one, I mean, you talked about calories in, calories out. Is there a calorie measure, how many calories you're giving, or is that kind of slightly different because you're applying energy in a different way?
Well, that's usually, I would think, what people would control for in their assessments. Is like, given this number of calories produced, does it do better or worse on all these other things? Is usually how they tend to report it. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Another, like you said, another one that they typically measure is greenhouse gas emissions, or that they try to measure. But basically, we won't know for sure until we have a specific process to model. So a lot of those LCAs are based on suspension culture or using microcarriers and gigantic stir tank reactors, but that's obviously very different from the technology that we use. So probably once actual facilities are open, that's when we'll have definitive answers about how much more or less efficient it is on a wide range of topics.
Thank you. Another question here.
Hello, that was really interesting to look at. I was wondering, I can't remember the name of the tubes, but the ones with the white fibers in. What are the fibers made of? And also, like a follow-up question, have you ever eaten any of this stuff? And does it become like solid muscle, if that makes sense?
Yes, so I don't think I can say what our fibers are made of. We've gone through a bunch of formulations, and if you want to see some of our original formulations, they're actually published in the academic literature, and those were made of polystyrene, which is the same plastic that the flasks are made of. We've made some improvements since then. And what was your second question? Oh yeah, have I ever tried it? So I've never tried any of the stuff that we've grown here because we're not licensed to be like eating stuff. But I was so lucky at the New Harvest Conference. They're a cellular agriculture nonprofit. A couple of years ago, I got the chance to try Wild Type's cultured meat salmon with cellular agriculture cream cheese on a bagel in New York City. And it was so amazing. I couldn't believe how much it tasted like salmon. And I had just had a bagel and lost the previous day, which was very lucky because I don't usually order that. So yeah, I mean, that was a really wonderful experience. And I was absolutely amazed. Because usually if they come out on their own, they might just be like a cell slurry, unless you find a way to mechanically detach them, in which case they can keep their structure. So there's all sorts of things that people could do to texturize them or to maintain the texture after harvest. But I don't know what they did, but it was good.
Thank you.
Have either of you tasted?
Yeah, I actually have tried one back in India where I used to work.
Legally or illegally?
Semi-legally. It was a closed-door tasting. But there, the inclusion level of the cell cultivated meat was very less. So it was like 5%, and the rest was plant-based. So the future of a lot of these technologies is also in the direction of hybrid meats. So it could be like half plant-based, half cell cultivated. There could be like ingredients that's precision fermented. So it needn't be just one technology. And I tried a hybrid product, yeah.
Yeah, I've had cultivated fish and cultivated beef, and I have to say, in both of those experiences, I eat a lot of the plant-based stuff. I have a lot of plant-based burgers and so on, and in both instances, I was really blown away by it. It's very much like, wow, this was the real thing. You know, in the beef tasting that I did, which was in the Netherlands, they actually served us half a plant-based burger for comparison, and then half a cultivated meat burger, which again is sort of a hybrid with plant-based with beef cells. I think there's about 30% cultivated cells. And it really is like the next level of that beef taste that you know. So yeah, it's very, very different from the plant-based meats that you can get. It's really quite something, yeah.
The plant. Wait, sorry. When you say... Could we wait for the microphone? Sorry, thanks. It came out with such enthusiasm, it must still be there.
When you say that you ate like the cultivated meats, and this is in all of your cases, I guess meat has a percentage of fat in it. Is that the hybridization of like plant and animal together? Because I imagine your burger wasn't 100% like muscle fibers, and the same with the salmon.
That's right, yeah. No, that's a really good question. And actually the cultivated fat, which is adipose tissue, they cultivate the fat cells, and that's where a lot of the flavour is. So there's a company in the UK in London called Hoxton Farms that specialises in producing cultivated, I think, pork fat. And that is something that you can add to a plant-based sausage, for example, and that's going to be where a lot of the flavour is, yeah. So there's companies cultivating muscle cells and cultivating the fat cells, and yeah, mixing the two together to get meat. Yeah.
I'm quite enjoying watching people's faces when you talk. Because some of them smiling and some of them pulling quite extreme faces when you describe some of this stuff. I've got a question, it's probably for Alice, around, I mean, you talked about where you get the cells from, but the medium you grow them in, because at the moment they're still, even if you've grown them, there's, it's not a vegan product yet, is it?
Well, it depends entirely on the medium that you use. So a lot of standard cell culture media do use animal products in them, but there have been many developed serum-free media, so that don't use any animal products or animal-derived products at all, and are still sufficient for the cells to survive and thrive. It's mostly a matter of making recombinant growth factors. One of the main things you get from animals are these huge proteins that basically direct the cells to produce certain genes and express them at certain times. And so if you can isolate what those essential growth factors are, you can actually teach E. coli or yeast or whatever to produce them exogenously, and then you can harvest those and feed those to your cells instead, so you don't have to get them from animals.
Any other questions from the room or online? Yes? Sorry. There's a lot of running going on.
I just wonder about how competitive the industry is. Is there a bit of an arms race going on? Because I imagine when somebody does make a massive breakthrough here, there's going to be patents and a lot of sort of, implications to ag tech and the existing industries out there. So is it quite competitive and people quite secretive about some of the things that maybe you guys are working on?
I thought the question was about the technology, but no, it's show me the money is kind of the question, really. How competitive is it?
The three of us could answer that. But yeah, I think it is a bit competitive, but I think the spirit behind it, because it's such a mission-driven industry, is most people I really think are in it for the love of the game, for wanting to make something that really works. But because, of how business works, of course there's still competitiveness. I don't know if either, you both probably know more about that than I do.
Yeah, no, it is super competitive, but I guess the uniqueness of this industry is that it's fairly nascent. So it's like a rising tide lifts all boats kind of situation where all the startups are kind of coming together, trying to pool in resources. There's also nonprofits like the ProVeg Incubator or GFI that's also trying to make this information and knowledge repository open access. So that helps a lot of young students as well as researchers that's trying to get into the industry. So I guess it's because it's fairly emerging and there's no clear pathway of how everyone could get involved. Everyone's sharing resources. So.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it is the case that there's probably no one person who knows all of the cutting edge stuff going along, because a lot of it is exactly as you say, private within companies. But you do have this phenomenon, as Alice mentioned, where so many of the people in the industry are mission driven, and that includes A lot of the CEOs of the companies are doing it because they're environmentalists or because they're vegans or other reasons like this. But not only the people running the companies, but also the people investing in the companies and owning the companies. There's a lot of purpose-driven investing going on. Yeah, exactly. So there's now a lot of shared patents. You mentioned GFI, the Good Food Institute, are acquiring some of these patents and making them open for others to use. There's also a little, I don't know how much to go into this. I find it interesting. You asked about patents.
Your nerdy niche, are we going?
Yeah. I just wrote a paper about the patents in this area. So there's something called benevolent patent. Called benevolent patent sharing. Yeah, where the idea is that companies which have patents on technologies which can be very socially beneficial and bring about great changes, medicines and stuff like this, could be incentivized to make those patents open for others to use in exchange for extensions on other non-socially beneficial patents. So the classic example is like your malaria cure versus your male baldness cure, which is like kind of a trivial matter in comparison, but where the money is, right? So you can we're going to say you can have an extension on your male baldness cure if you make open your malaria cure, and it's kind of a mechanism for incentivizing the sharing of those pro-social patents.
I know which one is affecting me most. There are no photographs allowed of me from this angle. I'm just going to say that. So a question at the back, and then one at the front.
Speaking as a carnivore, better put my hands up quickly. And when we talk about food, and we eat food for lots of reasons, the pleasure of eating food and the texture and the taste, and I get all that. Once you scale it up, the question you haven't answered, and compared to meat today, is there any difference in shelf life with these cells? Will they stay longer? Your meat goes off, or you have to freeze it. So I'm trying to think of hot countries where one of the major things is food degrading. Is this going to make a difference on that?
I'll have a guess. So I'm not a food safety specialist, but my understanding would be that the shelf life of poultry meat would be probably similar, but if anything, a bit longer. And also, it has much less of a chance of developing things like E. coli or Listeria because of the nature of how those sorts of foodborne illnesses come about during slaughter or during, all the parts of meat production that involve like dirt and grime and interaction with the intestines and that sort of stuff. So I think from a foodborne pathogen shelf life standpoint, we have a slight advantage.
Okay. There's a question at the front. Thank you. Henry didn't know he'd volunteered for this, by the way.
So this is the background. I'm a pediatrician. I was wondering from a fortification perspective, do you think that using cultivated meat and stuff, you can use it to fortify with vitamins and things like iron and stuff like that, which maybe will help developing countries to provide food easily to children and stuff, to help reduce malnutrition, and does that probably helps better than general animal meat?
Yeah, I love this question. So absolutely. It depends a lot on how companies take it, if they're going to genetically modify the animal cells or not. You don't have to make poultry meat, and so that might get it through regulation a bit faster. But if people are open to eating genetically modified products, then you can have it overexpress all sorts of vitamins. And so innate in the cells themselves, there would be more nutritional density, more nutritional value. There's a great paper on that by Andrew Stout. He engineered the cells to produce beta-carotenoids, which are mostly found in like carrots, the beta-carotene, which is something that a lot of people are short on, but you could get it in your pork.
So I'm going to ask a question now. I've written loads of questions, so you're not giving me a chance to ask any of them, which is a good sign, frankly. But there's something kind of slightly being touched on, because we've done a lot on the technology, but it's just touching on kind of social sort of issues, really. Are there kind of other changes, other than there's clearly challenges in technology, but are there social or policy hurdles to making progress? And that's probably a question for you guys.
Yeah, so currently the framework is something called the Novel Foods Regulation, which is something that the UK has inherited from the EU, and that is what cultivated meat products will go through. In the UK, we have the Cell Cultivated Products Sandbox, which is an opportunity for the regulators in the FSA to get a better understanding of cultivated meat products and to be able to understand the issues that need to be regulated around. And the UK is, at the moment, going to be a bit of a leader in that sense. There's a couple of countries actually already that have approved sale of cultivated meat, so you can buy cultivated meat, not yet in the UK, but in the US and in Israel and in Singapore and Australia as well, I believe. So there's a good number of countries that have now approved sale of cultivated meat. But in Europe, it's looking like it's going to be quite a slow process. And that is, at the moment, one of the benefits of the UK having left the EU is that we were able to go our own way on this. And the FSA is really doing a great job at bringing together all the companies to get the understanding that they need on this. So the regulation in the UK is coming along quite well now. You might have seen, I think it was last year, the UK approved cultivated meat for sale in pet food. So there has been a run of a few hundred pet food batches, or a few hundred units of pet food in one batch made with cultivated meat, which is very exciting, and sold at a Pets at Home store in London.
The dogs tell the difference.
Yes, 9 out of 10 dogs couldn't tell the difference. Yeah. So yeah, that's very exciting. And then in terms of the social aspect, there definitely are some people who have an opposition, principally, or just kind of think it's a bit gross or whatever, don't want to eat it. And I think that that's fine. It doesn't have to be for everybody straight away. It can be, there's a good number of people, probably a lot of people who are in this room and very kind of interested in science and educated people and so on, who are likely to be amongst the first early adopters for cultivated meat. And I think that, as with a lot of innovations that diffuse over time, right, you get kind of later people coming in, and eventually as the things become more normal and more tested, then you'll perhaps see some of those more hesitant people at first who are coming around to the idea. And of course, we've heard about the relative efficiency. So, in the long run, it's likely that a lot of these products that we're talking about are going to be cheaper than the animal products. I don't know if anyone's been tracking the price of animal products recently, like the price of beef is like this and the price of eggs is like this, right? So moving towards a much more efficient process is going to be a way to get it cheaper as well.
Yeah.
The public attitudes, there's stats that follow this. It's kind of similar with a lot of technologies. Don't be offended, anyone in the room. I'm approaching a large birthday soon. But it's kind of, there's a bit on, if you tend to be quite technophilic rather than technophobic, you're likely to more likely to want to try this. Yeah. It also, there's an age correlation as well, isn't there? Young people are going, yeah, I'll try this lab-grown meat, not allowed to call it that. I like these cell-cultured products, whereas older generations are less likely to. But it's one of those things where, kind of those early adopters are going to be kind of there, and then we'll let them see how they like it.
It's kind of like that positioning challenge of like, how much do people want to know? I think now the younger generation really wants like transparency around like where their food is coming from and where it's sourced. And with cultivated meat, I guess you got to be as transparent as possible, because it's also a longer gestation period to market. Like you will see these products maybe in 5 years, in 10 years in your supermarket, hopefully. So in that period, there's also like a full narrative that we need to be constantly having about like what is happening in the industry and what is like the scaling challenge really, and why it's taking longer to reach your plates as opposed to like, oh, it's just like a sciencey Franken food that's not being able to scale.
And there are criticisms, aren't there, of alternative proteins?
Yeah.
Are they kind of, are some of them founded, or are they all nonsense? I mean, are they kind of genuine criticisms that you think are?
Frankly, I think a lot of it is unfounded. There's a big meme at the moment about ultra-processed foods. Who's heard of ultra-processed foods, right? It's a very scary category. And a lot of this appears to be aimed at meat alternatives. But in fact, plant-based meat, for example, is healthier than meat from animals. You're going to get a higher percentage of protein often, you're going to have lower levels of saturated fat, you're going to have more fiber, you're going to reduce the chances of disease coming from meat, right? A lot of food poisoning in meat products. So it's one of these tricky things where, on average, things in the category called ultra-processed foods, there can be health problems associated with that. But it's a massive category, most of which is like sweets and fizzy drinks and stuff. So it's kind of obvious if you think about it like that, right? But yeah, it's this kind of categorization problem where there's some problem with the wider category, and a lot of that misunderstanding has been, frankly, I think, weaponized. I mean, maybe I'm out there with that assessment. I think there's a deliberate pushing of this idea that this is ultra-processed foods and therefore bad, whereas actually, that doesn't really make sense. I wrote on LinkedIn the other day, thinking that plant-based meat is unhealthy because it's ultra-processed food is like thinking that bicycles are bad for the planet because they're vehicles. Right? It's like, okay, you can appeal to the wider category, but it's not really doing the job.
Okay. So I did, there were people with questions that I rudely jumped in. Gentlemen, you had a question as well.
Yes, thanks. It's a question to all of you, really. I mean, we talked about what's happening in the research. How soon is it going to be mass produced? How soon will we see it on the shelves?
Anyone make a prediction? And bear in mind, you're being recorded. And this will be on YouTube, so we can laugh at you later. Alice, you go first.
Good question. I mean, it's already been in restaurants and limited runs. It's been in products where it's only 1% of the product. I mean, yeah, if it's a question of when is it going to be widely on supermarket shelves and cheaper than conventional meat, I would give it more than a decade, probably. But if it's being in supermarkets and it's 25% of the product, and then maybe it's at a little bit more of a premium price, then maybe 5 years. But yeah, anyone's guess really.
Any advances on 5 and 10 years?
I was saying 5 and 10 years earlier as well, from like a hybrid perspective. Like, I'm assuming that products will be on like anywhere between like 20 to 30% maybe cultivated meat. And again, like, it can be on menus as opposed to shelves, because I guess that also gives startups as well as chefs some control over how these products are positioned and how they're being eaten as well. So
yeah. And I think a lot of it is just waiting for regulators, basically, here in the UK and Europe. And again, the UK is going a little bit faster than Europe on this, which is good. But if you go to the States, there's cell-cultivated salmon being sold every day in some restaurants. There's a company called Wild Type there, which have, they're filling weekly orders from restaurants all the time. There's also a company called Vow in Australia, and they said at a conference I was at recently that over 100,000 people have eaten their cultivated meat, which a lot of people in the industry were blown away. We didn't know it was at that scale already. So, there are parts of this moving quite quickly, and I think really for us in Europe and the UK, it's a case of waiting around for the regulators a lot of the time. But, again, props to my friends at the FSA who are doing a great job speeding that along.
Yeah, nice plug there. I'm sure they'll be nice to you for that.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Yeah. So, question, second last row, and then one on the back row as well.
We've been talking a lot about cell-grown stuff, but we've not really covered fermented, and I'm quite interested in the fermented sort of protein side of it, and you've touched on a few little elements of it. If you could expand on that, I would be really interested.
Thank you. Who wants to take that?
Yeah, well, fermented, so within fermented, you can talk about 3 strands as well, which like traditional fermentation, that's your beers and your yogurts. Biomass fermentation, which is corn, in fact. Corn is technically a fungi, not plant-based, so that's biomass fermentation, where the actual mass of the food itself is from fungi.
You're going to see a bit of the first ever corn, pretty much, on the tour.
Oh, really? Oh,
that's
cool.
In the collections, actually.
Oh,
I don't know what it's looking like now, whether you'd want to eat it, but you're actually going to see a bit of early research corn.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's what you came for.
Nice.
Sorry, carry on.
So that's your biomass fermentation. We'll see some biomass fermentation in a minute. And then the third is precision fermentation, which is really like the cutting edge. And that's where you have, I think, normally genetically modified microbes that can then produce animal protein. So there's a company in the States called Perfect Day, and they have a genetically modified, I think, yeast that produces whey protein that is not from a cow, so you can have animal-free dairy. And again, that's another company that has already sold products as well. It's kind of at the cutting edge. There's a brand of ice cream called Brave Robot, which is this precision fermented whey protein. So yeah, that's your fermentation products. And precision fermentation is kind of where it's at in terms of the cutting edge.
Precision fermentation.
Yeah,
that does sound much cooler than just normal, like, I don't know, haphazard fermentation. I'm sure the opposite of that is. Devika, did you have any other sort of examples? Or?
Yeah, there's also like companies within precision fermentation that's doing like very specific ingredients. So like your hemoglobin that makes your meat bleed, or like makes it a rare meat. So there's like proprietary technology that helps take a plant-based burger, which might like taste like burger, but also like sizzle like burger, or like bleed like burger. So yeah, I think it's like something that brings all these technologies together that we want to see.
And egg whites as well. I don't know if there's a necessary feature of fermentation, but the fermentation products tend to be more like the dairy and egg alternatives from what I've seen. Maybe Alice can say if that's necessarily the case, but yeah, there's dairy and egg alternatives.
Yeah. With egg whites especially, it's because it's like almost all albumin, so it's nice you can just make the one thing, whereas some like ingredients would be more complicated, so they're less straightforward to precision ferment. But yeah, precision fermentation's been around for a really long time. I mean, in the US, which is where I'm from, I think over 90% of our cheese is made with precision fermented rennet replacements. So rennet is initially from cow stomachs, which is why some of the cheeses you buy are not vegetarian. And yeah, I mean, this has been decades now that people have been replacing rennet. Or when you think about how we used to get insulin from pigs, and now we get it from microbes. So precision fermentation has like wide-ranging applications, including in
we're starting to get close to running out of time. Are there any more questions? Oh, yes, one on the back. I didn't forget you, honest.
Thanks to all three of you. A quick comment, if I may, on ultra-processed foods. There was an interesting short piece in one of the Royal Statistical Society journals a couple of months ago that cast some doubt on some of the evidence against ultra-processed foods. It's Insignificance magazine, it's a very short piece. A question, if I may. Last month, I was briefly in Biosphere 2, which was a facility used many years ago in the Arizona desert, where people got locked up in a number of buildings to live off what they could produce. In your sort of industry, and perhaps relating to the very first question, comparing what you're doing with that kind of processing of living independently, measuring your energy, your food intake, and all the rest of it, is there anything you've learned, or other people should learn from those other possible ways of addressing food sustainability?
You want to take that?
Yeah.
Alice is looking keen.
I can start. So a big, what we call it, like a buzzword, I guess, in our industry is like the circular bioeconomy, which is making sure that things can be reused and recirculated instead of just going to waste. You're valorizing your waste, that sort of thing. And our company actually partnered with the ESA, the European Space Agency, to sort of design what a circular system would be for utilizing the off products of the cultured meat in space or on a space station or wherever you can't get new resources, utilizing the off products to grow microbes, to grow more nutrients, to grow more meat, because everything has to be in a closed loop in a system like that. And so I think there's been other people who have looked at that as well. Space, I mean, NASA was one of the first agencies to invest in cultured meat research, which is like in the early 2000s, because that's a cool application for it. Like, it's a very unique way to think about it. Obviously, you would design it really differently for a system like that than necessarily for a system on Earth. But yeah, people are thinking about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've seen a few startups that's come into our incubator as well that uses a lot of side stream valorization. So one company that we worked with, they're called Brew Bites. They're based in Germany. They use brewer spent grain from the beer industry to do precision fermentation. And that works really well for them because they're also based in Germany. There's another company that uses discarded potatoes to act like natural bioreactors to grow different flavors. So yeah, there's a lot of companies that's looking into this circular system of growing food because it's not enough to like replace meat, it's also important to know where you're sourcing different ingredients from. Yeah.
You've got time for one more question.
Okay, thank you.
Over here.
And my question is around scale. Obviously, we were sitting in this wonderful big building. Alice is in her, looks quite a small lab. I'm just trying to get my head around, I mean, there's a lot of excitement a few years ago about vertical farming and how that could be much more efficient and replace a lot of the agricultural. I'm just trying to get my head around how big a facility, if there was such a production facility for cultivated meat, how big a building would you need to feed, say, the UK?
Right, quick maths.
Gosh. I don't know if I'll be able to do that off the dome, but I think when you think about, well, the reactors will be really different. But when you think about like brewing beer or brewing, well, yeah, anything that uses microbes and using giant bioreactors for that, it would be pretty similar scales. So I don't know if you've ever gone on a tour of a brewery, but yeah, those big pilot facilities and then industrial facilities that take up an acre of land. I'm struggling to I'm struggling to quantify the space. I'm struggling to quantify the space, but it would be comparable to industries that already exist that are based on bioreactor production.
Significantly smaller amounts of land than farming, I'd have thought, though. Yeah.
Yes, that's what we almost always win on in the LCAs.
It's land use.
Everything else is up in the air, but land is, yeah.
I just want to, essentially, we're kind of coming to the end of our time. I think the panel have been brilliant, and I've had to ask very few questions, partly because you've asked loads, and then when I keep checking what questions I've got, you've asked most of them. So clearly, one of us wrote good questions, to be fair. It wasn't me, actually. But I just want to give the panel one kind of chance each, just kind of say one thing that we might not have covered, or you think is exciting, or you hope that people kind of knew about what you do. Who wants to go first? We'll go down the line. I see who's looking eager. Devika, you're looking eager. You know what you want to say.
I guess from like a non-profit angle, because I work for a non-profit incubator, it's just important to know that there's so many different actors that's working to scale this ecosystem. So you have your non-profits that's putting out research, open access research, so that everyone can read it. It's non-biased because it's not being funded by anyone specific. You have your policymakers that's also looking to push forward subsidies as well as public funding for this sector. And then you also have your startups like Alice's that's working really hard to bring these innovations to scale so they're on your plate soon. I guess it's just like a complex ecosystem that's really like trying to scale something that's hugely promising. And the more people are interested, I guess it'll just like help boost the ecosystem. Yeah.
Thank you. Go on, Chris.
Yeah, one thing I'll talk about is, sometimes some of the concerns that come up in this area is around farming jobs and, what will happen to farming jobs and so on. And I think it's important to say, we have a great graph on our website of the quantity of meat production over time in the UK, which is like this, and the number of agricultural jobs, which are like this. Right, so we're already in this kind of dynamic of moving towards more efficient meat production, but unfortunately, the reason for that on that graph is because we're moving towards more factory farms than ever. So, it is true that there are fewer agricultural jobs around than there were 50, 60 years ago. About 2/3 of them have gone since 1960 in the UK, but we're producing about twice as much meat as we were then. So it really is a story of mega farms and factory farms at the moment that are causing loss of agricultural jobs, and not a story of alternative proteins. But last thing I want to say as well, I think it's very easy to one appears to encounter a lot of skepticism and resistance and negative vibes about this topic if you go through any comment sections ever. But I think it's fantastic to see that there's so many of you who are open-minded about this and wanting to come and learn more about it. And really grateful to you all for being here. So thank you all.
You're just sucking up to everyone. That's the FSA. I think it's only fair, Alice, that you get the last word, since I think you've done the hardest work, actually. So yeah, what's kind of a final message that you'd like, or a bit of information you'd like to share?
Yeah, I guess for me, I would just say, I love thinking about how this could be amazing for the planet and amazing for animals and all the efficiencies and the cost, like all of that is interesting. But I would just encourage people to also think of the beauty and creativity of inventing new foods. Like, it's extremely exciting that we get to be a part of what could be a culinary revolution that's incomparable to anything since like the invention of cheese, which is incredible. And Isha Datar has a really great TED Talk. I think it's only like 10 to 15 minutes, and you should all watch it. It's about cultured meat and not just what it can do for the planet, but how it can be such a wonderful and fulfilling and exciting thing to be a part of.
Thank you. Just got things to say, and then just thank our panel, really. You've been an amazing audience, loads of incredible questions. Hope you enjoy the tour afterwards. We've still got tickets, like I say, for Eurovision in a couple of days, including the tour for that one. Anything you can't get tickets for now, you can watch online, because we'll be streaming these live. And if you're watching on live, you can ask questions too. Otherwise, you can just watch them and enjoy them in a slightly less interactive way. But they'll be up there on our YouTube channel. So I want to thank the Science Museum Group, the Science Innovation Park, and the team who've helped us have this site. Thank you very much. And I definitely want to thank our AV team as well, who've brought far more kit than I expected they would. It's kind of, they turned the whole place into a studio. I was like, bring a camera and a microphone, what more do you need? But that's been amazing. And most importantly, I'd like to thank the panel, who've just been excellent. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Organise the tours.